Culture today. We are back now for our weekly grain market update, and joining us to cover it as always is Dan O'Brien. He is our K-State grain market economist. So Dan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Samantha.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and start off with some of our futures trends that we've seen in the past week. I understand there's been kind of a continuation of a lot of these prices.
Yes, we've seen wheat of late in the last several days continue to move to the higher side. We were trading down around $9 3 or 4 days ago, and closed yesterday at 979.5. Got a little bit higher than that on the trade, heading seemingly back to $10. So that's probably the most definite upward trend that we see in amongst the major grains that we're watching, and that'd be again the hard red winter wheat contract out of CME for the lead Dees contract. When you look at corn, though, corn futures had gotten up to a high of about $7 within the last couple of weeks, and have been moving around sort of in kind of a quasi sideways move since that time. I think no doubt that followed from that USDA report that came in with a projection below 14 billion bushels, and so we have recovered a lot of the loss that we'd had from the highs of about 765, 770, just about back in April, May, and that had fallen down in mid-July down to about 560. Well, now we're back knocking on the door of $7. And to me, it makes a person wonder about when we come to the next WASDE report, October the 12th, WASDE and crop production report, if to what degree will we be moving around after that? Of course, before that time, we're going to get some harvest reports in, so we'll have some actual data from the field that will impact things. And for soybeans, pretty similar to corn, but maybe a little bit more volatile. Had been up within the last 2 weeks to about $15.10, $15.10, 15 to 15. Had fallen back down to about 14, probably 14.30 thereabouts, and traded yesterday at 14.57. So a lot of volatility. I'm seasoned enough when I can remember 5 or 10 cents causing excitement in the market, and this is just now noise, given all this stuff. So in terms of the national markets, it does seem that the wheat markets moving to the higher side, and really, part of that has to do probably with some strength we've seen in U.S. wheat exports. We've had 2 consecutive weeks of just under 25 million bushels of wheat actually being exported, and we need a pace of about 17 to meet the USDA's projections. So, that's really all for the good. And we look for signs of that in Kansas by looking for wheat basis trends. And we do have in our written notes this week kind of a follow up of that. So we see in I guess in Northwest Kansas probably a fair trend to the higher side, and other general trends moving sideways to positive. So I think that if the wheat futures are moving up and the basis levels are holding steady, then we're seeing cash prices on the local level still pretty strong. Again, we're looking at cash markets for wheat running from in the major areas that we're looking at, again, and taking the top bids. There are some lower than this, but in the elevators we're watching, 935 on the low side up to 964 on the high, and the 964s both are coming in. Well, they're coming in major export markets in Salina and Hutchinson, and with Topeka just about a dime behind that. So it seems that we're getting some export movement. Then that's giving us some pretty decent basis trends and basis support in some of these areas, and we've had our attention so much on the corn market and soybean market of late, and to some degree on the grain sorghum. That's interesting and kind of refreshing to see the strength that's being exhibited now in the wheat.
Absolutely, yeah. The strength in exports that we're seeing, where is that mostly coming from?
Well, I need to dig into the specifics of which countries are doing, but a lot of times we're looking at Mexico as a primary buyer, and a lot of countries in our hemisphere that are coming into play, the Caribbean, et cetera, and that makes sense given the higher cost of transportation to go again across the Atlantic, across the the Pacific, elsewhere. So a lot of our strength comes from our neck of the woods, and it, we're probably not economically set to go head to head with Russia or the European Union, even though they're a little short this year, just to sell the countries in the Middle East, just because of these transportation differentials. And one last thing, I'm all excited on wheat, but that we're seeing this in spite of the high US dollar. And normally the high US dollar works against wheat the most, just because there's so many competitors in those markets. But still, we're seeing what's occurring in the wheat market, and it's kind of a surprise, at least to this analyst.
Absolutely. Yeah. Something that we'll continue to follow for sure as the market calendar continues on. And I understand that when it comes to what we're seeing currently, there's a lot to be said in terms of supply and demand. And obviously you guys track that on agmanager.info, and that's in the form of kind of the balance sheets you guys put together. So let's talk
Yes.
through.
Well, yeah, as you're saying, yes, we put together balance sheets. Sorry to jump in on you there, but probably the best numbers I have of value to bring in on the supply demand side would be in corn and on soybeans. For corn, there's still a major question on where the USDA's final yield per acre and production numbers will come in. So we put together a number of scenarios on our info, looking at what happens at the current level, the 172.5 bushels per acre, and 13.944 billion bushels, but also plugging in on the same acres, reduced acres from what had been expected, a yield of 171 bushel an acre, 169 and a half, 168 matched that early Midwest Farm Tour number. So it's out there as something to consider. And you keep narrowing U.S. production down to 13.8 billion bushels to 13.7 to 13.6. But probably most importantly, you eventually get to the place where you take ending stocks for this marketing year that we're in now, way out there on August 31st, they get eventually below 1 billion bushels. Stocks to use gets closer to, that gets below 7 down to 6, and prices from being projected at 675 now by the USDA for this marketing year end up above $7, and in the most extreme cases, above 8 and beyond. So, we've got tight supply demand in the U.S. Our basis levels for corn show that. When you look at the strength in basis, that's holding up virtually everywhere across the state, except it's strongest in the western 2/3, still holding decent in the eastern third, but all at record high levels from at least since 2000, the highest we've seen by far since at least 2008. And we're even seeing now on grain sorghum, which we generally thinking of more of an export side. You're seeing in the western third of the state, where we'd be converting a lot of that into feedlot usage, or feeding usage or ethanol usage. You're seeing strength in basis in the Colby area, in the Garden City area, in the Salina area. Also some movements pretty decently. That's an ag term for trying to analyze markets that you don't have good numbers on. Anyway, but the point is that we're seeing good basis movement even for grain sorghum, and to me that's an indicator, probably at least I suspect that we're looking at grain sorghum in areas of tight supply being all that much more used for feed, and maybe even some ethanol plants.
Absolutely. Yeah. An option that producers are considering more and more with how tight things are getting, for sure. And then I know everybody is probably celebrating this as much as we are, but we've had some recent rains across the state. We were chatting beforehand, and last I checked our Kansas Mesonet website, we had rain across every single county in our state, which is absolutely incredible.
For someone, for a climatologist that looks at that whole soil profile, that may or may not be as exciting of a thing, but at least if we have rain in the topsoil, it can, there's hope that maybe more will follow. We'll see. And if they have moisture, they can put wheat in and get it germinated. And then hopefully if they get snow cover, live to fight another day out in the spring. I'm talking about an area that really Romulo Lulato should be talking about a lot more so than me. But as you and I were talking last week, we were kind of really, really, I was really hand wringing over how dry things were and how that would set us up for planting wheat or not. Well, now we've had some moisture. Perhaps it'll help on the trend and at least in the top few inches, we have a better chance of seeding wheat and getting germination, and then we'll go on from there.
Absolutely. Yes. Less use of the term dusting wheat and more planting. That's what I'm looking forward to hearing more of.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
go ahead, Dan.
I would add in just quickly on also have some numbers on soybean production and some projections. And USDA's current projection is for about $14.35 for a season average price and about 4.3 billion bushels. And there's risk. We could go either direction from that. I guess I'm still thinking that a high US dollar and a pretty successful run of exports out of South America is probably working. We may whittle down our export number a little bit more, but and if that happens at the same production, then we'd see some weakness in price. Still great prices, more like $13.35 instead of $14.35. But if you have that same whittling down of exports, but then end up and drop U.S. soybean production another bushel down to 49.5, very, very possible. Then you're then instead of $14.35, at least by my numbers, you're $1.50 or $2 higher. So you've got quite the situation to consider in the soybean market, and a lot will be riding on the October 12th report to give us some direction on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Something we'll look forward to hearing more from and learning more from for sure. And as those numbers get secured, we'll know more and more what we're really working with, but still more to come on that, obviously. But Dan, as always, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Samantha. Take care.
Absolutely. You as well. Once again, that was Dan O'Brien. He is our K-State grain market economist covering this week's grain market update. We'll be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today.